a major area of need. But we're not trying to foreclose the fact that there could be some sites where, in the context of a major redevelopment and an agreement with MSD, there was agreement that some other social tenants could be mixed in. That's a possibility.
Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily thinking of the council providing that social housing, but the JV partner.
Yeah.
And the independent hearings panel suggested or recommended that there should be no minimum size for apartments. We rejected that. However, I wonder if you would have any views on whether it may have been useful to maintain that minimum, no minimum size for these kind of developments that may occur in the future.
Well, we appreciate that the regulatory setting is different, but along the way, based on feedback from our own council departments and Selwyn, when we put together the design guide for new developments, which I think you've got a copy in there somewhere, the decision was made that in order to create acceptable and pleasant living environments, we should have a minimum, which I think is 45 square metres, yes. So we've effectively agreed as a standard, irrespective of the rules, that's the standard that we will be wanting to achieve.
And what does that do to taking into account the concerns that Councillor Casey has in relation to affordability? Surely a minimum size of 45 is not going to be at any time affordable.
Well, it won't be as cheap as a smaller one. That's a legitimate point, and that's part of the sort of trade-off. So all this is around how cheap. We all know it's around how cheaply you can build something versus the quality of the living environment. So we've been guided heavily in that by Selwyn's input and the experience of our own service providers in the council. So that seems to be the, if you like, the most acceptable trade-off point between the living environment you create and the cost. And we would be looking to reduce effectively the per unit costs and help the affordability with things that Councillor Casey was raising before around innovative design, more height. I mean, there's a lot of, it'll be increasingly acceptable to have a bit more height as we go forward, especially with more central units. So there'll be other ways rather than just reducing the size down too much that we will be looking at the affordability.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Councillor Darby.
Oh, thanks, Chair. And we've examined this through numerous workshops and a lot of meetings, and it's culminating here. I can't help but reflect on the decision here today is worth sort of taking note of. It's been quite a course, and it's a significant deliverable of this council and this committee. And I quite like to sort of reflect on how collegial this has been, how we've arrived here together. It hasn't been antagonistic as maybe a former Isthmus councillor experienced, a council experienced, and maybe that outcome would have been different if we had had the access to the information of a CCO and you know that wad of skill that I don't believe the former council really had access to. So acknowledge our team here, Graham, David, huge work here, and I think this is, and the rest, all sitting behind. I think this is a tremendous outcome, and I'm hugely impressed by Selwyn. I've actually just recently inspected their place for my own mother on the back of some of the material that I read through the due diligence process. And they really are impressive, and I think they will create a really impressive outcome over time throughout Auckland. One thing that I came to realise through this process when I started to look at some of my North Shore senior housing facilities is we didn't stack up as well as I thought. In fact, as the staff politely told me, and I've relayed to this meeting prior, in my own former North Shore area, we stacked up the worst. And then I looked at it more closely and I realised that some of the developments were located in, they were on the back of a stormwater project, fill in a gully, put the stormwater line in there. What would you do with that leftover land? I know what, we can throw some old people in there. And it was pretty much like that. Another development right alongside the motorway, the Peggy Phillips, right hard up alongside the motorway, breathing in all those leads that have now gone, of course, but all the other rubbish. So senior people, vulnerable in health in later years, and we put them hard on the edge of a motorway. So in gullies, on the edges of motorways. I've inspected more recently in the Devonport area places which are so tight, in Councillor Quack's a lot less than 45 square metres, where people are actually living their daylight hours out under an uninsulated awning. A curtain, almost like as thermal as it can be, is pulled across, and that is where they're in the daytime, and then they retreat to the unit proper to sleep and, you know, to read, etc., or, you know, have the balance of their life. Pretty miserable conditions, to be honest. We actually should not be proud of a lot of our housing stock. So this is actually desperate work. It's a cog in the housing crisis, this part. We shouldn't hide that fact that there is a lot of work to do in this space. And we're really going to get a lot more leverage by going to a third party. We just don't have capacity to do it all in-house. So I congratulate you all and us all for getting this over the line. I think this is a tremendous outcome. And going forward, I am aware that the tenants really do need to be front-footed in terms of communication. They have a lot of time to contemplate and fear what hasn't been communicated correctly or accurately. So that would be my only plea going forward, is that we stay in genuine communication with our tenants and future tenants. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Darby and Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I still have some questions, Madam Chair, but I would make the point that these 1,457 dwellings were built by the legacy councils. Councils are often smaller than the city councils, borough councils that preceded them, with very limited resources. And I have to say, in all fairness to those people who built those dwellings for senior Aucklanders, that they actually did a good job. And if consequentially the bigger councils, or some of them, neglected in the way that Councillor Darby says, that's no fault of the people who actually built those dwellings. So I pay tribute to them. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have any, because how many have we, Super City, built?
No.
Anyway, I have some questions. What is the book value of the transaction we're talking about with the 1,457 dwellings? What sort of...
170 million.
How much?
170 million is the cover.
That wouldn't be a market value, though, would it, for 1,457 dwellings?
That's the book value.
I doubt it. Okay, how many of these dwellings, to take up Councillor Darby's confession, if you will, how much are these of these dwellings are actually functional and fit to live in?
Depends what criteria you use.
Well, how many have people in them?
In the
Can I
previous
just
study
hang on
suggested...
before we're going down quite...
No, I'm asking a
Well,
question, it's
just-
very
yes,
important.
Councillor
No need
Lee.
to interrupt.
Actually, Councillor Lee, I'll just like to quietly remind you that I'm chairing the meeting and I have every right to
Yeah, but
interrupt.
I am asking a question. You have no right to interrupt.
Oh, I
So
do.
please stop
I
it.
do, and I will.
I'd like an answer, please.
The point I'm making as a chair is this issue has been workshopped. We've had a huge amount of information on the issue of the
Good,
quality
the answer should
of
be
the
readily
quality-
forthcoming then,
Just
shouldn't it?
let me complete my point, Councillor Lee. A little bit of generosity around this table has been appreciated over the last little while. I'd like you to think about that.
I'll just
The
make some
issue-
generous comments about the
the
legacy
issue-
councils, Madam Chair, if you were listening.
Yeah, well,
Defended them.
so, as I was saying, how about we stick to the point that we're trying to address now, which is going forward with the joint venture and going forward with the process. Councillor Lee has asked a question, I'm sure we've got the answer to it, but what I don't want to do is to revisit the entire process that we've spent the last 3 years working on. Thank you, Graham.
Madam Chair, the answer is that of the 1,412 current units, the vast majority are inhabitable. We've got around about 70 odd vacant at the minute, which are, you have a normal churn and upgrades and so on, but it will be, many of them are not at a fit for purpose level, though they are inhabitable.
How many are not fit for purpose?
Well, we've got a number which are, as Councillor Darby explained, are small bedsit units. They're often not.
I'm just asking for some numbers, please.
Well, sorry, I haven't got the numbers here in front of me, but
It's
they're,
roughly
they're,
All right,
they're
yes,
inhabitable,
we
but
go-
they're not
okay.
necessarily.
Point of order, Madam
Can I-
Chair, we have done this
can I
before,
have
and
another-
I
Can I have
do
another
not,
question?
Councillor,
and I
there's a
do
point of
not
order.
appreciate Councillor Lee's continually hanging of the chair.
I have the floor.
Councillor,
I have the floor.
Councillor, and I have the chair.
And
So,
you have the
we could
chair.
battle that out. Let's actually just move forward with a bit of
I have
goodwill.
another question,
We're
Madam
trying
Chair.
to work out what it is that you're wanting from this discussion. What is the point of your
Done all this
question? Because
before.
we're struggling
What
to
is the
see.
point of view?
Madam Chair, my next question, and it would probably best be directed to council management, is that we went through a special consultative procedure, and I would like to know when we can see the written submissions for or against. The special consultative procedure under the Local Government Act is very, very important. It should be taken seriously. It should, and I think when you make a decision of significance, you should have all the information that the Local Government Act expects us to obtain before we make these decisions. So where can we see these submissions?
Well, I understood that it happened,
It has.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has.
I guess that's the frustration around the table. This has
I'd
been
like to-
being reported on a monthly basis to the Auckland Development Committee.
Yes.
Councillors have had a chance to go through all this information, and the councillors who've attended those meetings have done that.
So they're
Hence the-
written.
It's been done, councillor.
Put me straight here. So the written submissions from the public are available.
Yes, it was part of our LTP process.
I'm probably not the one to answer it, but I've seen the summary report and I've seen the submissions, and I'm sure they're publicly available. Oh, there we are. There's the right person.
Yeah, through the chair, that was made available when prior to
Yeah.
the LTP being agreed a few weeks ago.
Right.
So we've
You
gone through
know
that at
where they're
length.
not a part of this, or
Oh, we've moved
No,
on.
councillor,
Right,
I
okay.
think
Yeah,
we're confusing two processes here.
I'll
So
just make
this
one
is-
final point, Madam Chair.
Just need to stick with the process in hand,
Okay,
councillor
well-
Lee.
I just want to make one final point, Madam Chair. The small legacy councils and their successors built this housing stock. The super city hasn't built any. We have set up a purpose-built CCO, very well resourced, Development Auckland or Panuku, but apparently this is not able to manage these dwellings, and we have set up yet another organisation, a joint venture, and the officers indicated that even
Madam Chair,
that
speak
may
to
set up a
relevance.
joint venture. So
Panuku's going to
what
be
we
working
are
with
good
these
at building, Madam Chair, is bureaucracies, not
Okay,
necessarily
councillor,
houses.
Councillor, hang
Read your
on,
agenda,
hang
it's
on
already
now.
in the agenda.
We'll
Read the
just,
agenda.
okay, shush, everyone, shush, just shush.
To put up with this nonsense.
This is going well, isn't it? So, we'll just return to the issue that most of us seem to understand, and, that I think we will just park some of those last comments. This is exactly what we've asked Panuku to do, and they're delivering what we've asked them to do. I'm going to put the recommendation. We have no more speakers. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, and
Thank you, Madam
I
Chair.
echo the congratulations to the team for a job very well
Fantastic.
done over the last few years. I acknowledge our partners, the Selwyn Foundation, delighted to be working with you, and let's get our older adults well housed, and let's make the most of this extraordinary property asset that we've got to build some good social housing. Thank you. We're doing what we said we'd do, and we followed through. It's
Yes.
great. Thank you all.